there everyone, and welcome to February, the month of love. Now, usually I'm not a big fan of Valentine's Day and all the celebrations that come with it, but this year I've decided to be a little less curmudgeonly and, do my part in feeling more happier, I suppose. And I've decided to give a shot at reading romance novels in this week leading up to Valentine's Day. Today is the 10th of February, so we're 5 days away. It is currently 6:03 p.m. It's 6:03 a.m. It's early and bright in the morning, and I have decided to start a week-long readathon reading exclusively romance books. Now, this is a genre that I don't typically gravitate towards, or even if I do read romance in my books, it's always as a very minor subplot in a rather plot-heavy book, usually fantasy-themed. Honestly, you can't escape romantic subplots in books these days, and I don't mind them. It's when the romance is the main focus of the book that, if it's not done well, I really hate it. So this week, let's just experiment with my tastes and see what I love in a good romance. Personally, as of now, my understanding of myself is that I just prefer the subplots. Like, come on now. At least if it's a subplot, if the romance is bad, you can always rely on the main plot to make the reading experience worthwhile. But other than that, the specifics, I don't like insta-love, obviously, who does? It needs to be sufficiently slow burn. The slower it is, the better. And then regarding the tropes, I think I don't have a particular burning hatred towards any of the tropes, unless they're like just so overused and the characters are so cookie cutter. I really do enjoy a good, say, fake dating or enemies to lovers trope. It's alright, it's fine. Without further ado, this is my selection for our very first day of this challenge, and that is Spellbound by F.T. Lukens. Now, I scoured my bookshelves to find a romance book, and I quickly realized that this is the only physical copy that I own. So either I will try to borrow some more books from my friends in the coming days, or I will read quite a few that I'm interested in digitally. Either way, we're gonna have a grand old time attempting to melt my currently frozen heart. Regarding this book, I have already read two of the author's previous works, In Deeper Waters. Oh, it's right here. I've read both In Deeper Waters and So This Is Ever After, and I thought both books were a cute, adorable time. Pretty solid 3 stars, nothing much more to it. I thought In Deeper Waters had a better plot than So This Is Ever After, and this book, I believe, will have a stronger plot than In Deeper Waters. It seems that it revolves very solidly around the plot, which I enjoy. Magical rivals, deadly secrets, an inconvenient crush. What could possibly go wrong? Oh well, from that, everything. Basically, the premise is that in this book, we follow our main protagonist, Edison Rooker. This guy, I presume, he wants to gain access to the magical world. The problem is he doesn't have magic, and he also has an illegal spellbinder device that he needs to keep hidden or risk facing the authorities arresting him or something. So his plan is to get an apprenticeship with this very powerful sorceress called Antonia Hex. And while he's working there, he encounters the apprentice of his mistress's biggest rival. That's this guy, I think his name is Sun. And then they both have to team up and work together to save his mistress after she gets kidnapped, or they both have to risk losing their magic. I don't know how that would work, but it sounds really high stakes, and I am intrigued, and I think it's gonna be a grand old time. So now I'm gonna head off and have a nice little reading sprint in the early morning, and that's gonna be a very productive start to the week. 'Week. 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 ' past 9:30 p.m. and I just wanted to check in one last time on the very first day of this readathon. And my progress so far is that I am on page 82 of Spellbound, which is a little short of what I was expecting to have read by now. That is 100 pages, but there's still time left in the day, and I think after I film this clip, I'll need to bath, and then I need to reach up to page 100, and I'll probably need to select another book because before I sleep, I like to read about 10% of an ebook. That's how I make very consistent progress on books that I read digitally, just devoting that time before I fall asleep to reading. I don't know if the blue light at that time is very good for your health. My eyes don't really get strained because when I read, the light setting is such that it automatically, not quite syncs, it automatically just changes the intensity with the natural light outside, so it doesn't really strain your eyes, but the blue light from the devices is still a problem. Nevertheless, a quick update about what I think about Spellbound so far. I am really enjoying the plot. I mean, there's not much of a plot currently. What I told about the premise, after I've read up to this point, there are a few corrections that I need to make. And a bit more things I would like to add on. Basically, our main character, Edison Ruka, after the death of his grandmother, he has basically been shut out of the magical community because he himself doesn't possess magic. His grandmother was the only link to that world that he had. And he is a self-proclaimed genius. Well, he does show characteristics of a genius. He graduated from school very early, and so now he is walking around with a fresh high school diploma in his backpack, and he is seeking a job in the magical world, even though he doesn't have any powers himself. So he walks into the office of Antonia Hex, who, despite being the most powerful sorcerer in existence ever, is relegated to the position of a measly curse breaker because of her contempt for the governing authority in this world. So he shows some promise because he, despite lacking magical powers, makes up for it by being very talented with technology. So the spellbinder that he possesses, the illegal one, is actually a device that he has invented himself that is capable of reading ley lines. And those are the basically electric wires through which magical energy flows in this world. And non-magical people can't really see it, only sorcerers can, but with the help of his spellbinder he is able to see it. The device reads it for him, and that is quite an astonishing discovery. So Antonia decides to help him keep that discovery under wraps, because if the governing body gets wind of it, they will certainly arrest the both of them and confiscate the device. And I believe that is what happens. Antonia probably gets arrested later in the book. So that's why he and the other sorcerer's apprentice Sun have to go together to rescue both Antonia and Sun's master, who is another sorcerer called Fable. So that's the basic run through of what I've read so far. None of it is particularly spoilery, it's just a bit more in depth than what the synopsis gives you over here. Now, my personal thoughts on what's going on. I quite enjoy the writing. It's really light and funny and kind of camp, but yeah, I'm just here for the ride. There is quite a lot of queer representation in the book. Both Sun and their master, well, not master, their mentor, the other sorcerer, Fable, both of them use they them pronouns, and while it's not explicitly mentioned, I believe they must be non-binary. Maybe that term doesn't exist in this world. Oh, this is an urban fantasy world. It's not high fantasy worlds like the other books from the author that I've read. So that's quite interesting. I usually don't like urban fantasy very much. I like my fantasy books set in a faraway world where I can get transported from the mundane realities of everyday life, and urban fantasy just doesn't do it for me. I mean, one moment we're reading about supernatural phenomenon, and the next these characters are commuting on a bus. But in this book, I strangely don't mind it. The magic itself that we read about so far is it's quite whimsical, because the curses that they have to break as of now are just extremely funny. Almost, they go and fix a little girl's nose which gets turned into a pig's snout, and currently they're dealing with an infestation of singing mice. Nothing life-threatening as of now, and I really hope the book will continue to have this kind of whimsical, cozy vibe, though with an imminent kidnapping in the process. I'm not sure how that will turn out. So that's it for today's update. I'll probably check in with you tomorrow morning once I've read a bit more, and I'll probably also tell what my final decision as to what the ebook that I have picked to read is. So until then. It's day 2 now, and unfortunately it's not bright and early in the morning. It's actually about to be 1 o'clock by now in the afternoon. The reason I didn't update earlier was because I only woke up at around 7:30 today, and by that time the house is actually really loud and busy and not very conducive to filming, because I'll just keep getting interrupted. But now it's kind of like a downtime in the afternoon before everyone goes to eat lunch. So I guess I can give a little mini update now. I did make more progress on Spellbound, and I'm currently on page 107. I did do a little bit more reading today morning, and not much more to say. I mean, it's just been like 20 pages more than yesterday's update. I did forget to mention a couple of things I'm feeling about this book though. Primarily, Rook's mentor, or like the sorceress that he's working for, Antonia Hex, she's just so incredible. Like, she is extremely confident and self-assured, and she's like, I am the most powerful sorcerer in the world, and I'm gonna let everyone know that. She definitely appears larger than life. She has this like very scary aura that makes people very wary of her, and I just love her personality, which almost teeters on like narcissism. It's just, I relate to Antonia. I hope that when I become a renowned scientist, I can also have that aura of self-assuredness and confidence that she has. I mean, I'm already pretty confident in myself, but I'll have a reason to think that I'm incredible in the future. Rook's and Sun's relationship so far is very much dislike to love, I think, because as of now, I don't know about Rook, but Sun, who we also get a perspective from. First, there'll be 2 chapters from Rook's perspective, and then a chapter from Sun's perspective. So I guess Rook is definitely the dominant POV in this book. Nevertheless, Sun has a very like grouchy personality. It's very much the grumpy ex-sunshine trope going on here. And I relate to both of them actually. Different aspects of their personality remind me of myself. And it's weird seeing a book where like my entire personality traits could be just cut up and distributed to all of the characters pretty evenly. It is extremely interesting, to say the least. So that's it for the update on this. I imagine the next time I update, I'll either be done with the book, because I've already talked so much about just one book in this video, and I do want to, have space to talk about the other books that I'll read. Speaking of which, yesterday before I went to sleep, I did pick up an ebook, and that is Hani and Ishu's Guide to Fake Dating by Adiba Jaigirdar. That's a book that I've had my eye on for a while because I quite like the fake dating trope, and this does have cool South Asian representation. Not my community per se, because let's just say South Indians are rarely represented in non-South Asian media, or honestly non-South Indian media. Even within the country, we don't really get much representation in popular media. That aside, this book is basically a sweet sapphic romance with a school setting. The plot is that we follow these two Bengali girls. One of them, Ishita, is Indian Bengali, so I assume she's from West Bengal, and she is very academically focused, and she has a difficult relationship with her family, where her sister, her older sister, is like the golden child who's done everything right and is currently pursuing medicine at UCL. So her parents also expect her to live up to the expectations that her sister has set. So she's really facing a lot of pressure. And on the other side, we have Humaira. She is Bangladeshi Bengali, and she's like the popular kid at school. She goes around with a lot of friends, and she's like just extremely optimistic and kind to everyone. But secretly, she does feel the drain on her mental health because the friendships she maintains are mostly rather toxic. None of her friends really understand her completely and always have slight either microaggressions or just ignorant things that they say regarding her culture and religion. So she's also dealing with a little difficulty like that, and it gets exacerbated when she decides to come out to her friends as being bisexual, and they just dismiss her, saying that you've only ever been with boys before. How do you know that you actually like girls? And in the spur of the moment, she claims that she's actually dating someone at the moment, and the only person she can think of the top of her head that her friends will believe is Ishita. So this will probably have repercussions because she probably doesn't want to out herself, but then they make a deal together that if Ishita decides to fake date Humaira and make sure her friends, believe that she is bisexual so that she feels validated in her identity, then Humaira will help Ishita run for head girl, and being a popular kid, she'll also be able to make Ishita popular, and that way she will get more votes from the student body, because Ishita has a very grouchy, curmudgeonly personality and rarely smiles at anyone, and people think that she's just a very cold, aloof, withdrawn weirdo. Relatable. Why am I relating to so many characters in these books that I'm reading? Anyway, yeah, Ishita's personality definitely reminds me of myself during middle school, especially high school. I warmed a bit more towards people, but yeah, she's literally middle school me. So that has been an interesting reading experience. I'm at the 20% mark of the book currently, and I hope to make a little more progress while the light is still out. And by the time I go to bed, I'll probably read 20% more, so that way I'll be mostly done with this book by today. It's very easy to flip through, despite the plot sounding very light-hearted and hilarious. Actually, when you start reading the book, there's a lot of underlying just tension, especially with Ishita's family dynamics and also Humaira dealing with all of that. It actually has a very somber undertone as you read, and you do feel very much for these characters and you really empathize with what they're going through. It's not a pleasant time for either of them, but I hope as I keep reading, they both will be able to work through their problems individually and find peace with themselves. Day 4 of the readathon, not day 3. I couldn't update yesterday because once again the house was just too loud the entire day. There was also a festival going on in the temple nearby, so the processions that were happening were also really loud. And then there were these parties going on till 11 at night, so it was still too loud even then. Yeah, it was just not a good day to film. But nevertheless, I woke up early and here I am. It's just about to be 6:30 and I actually have to keep this short because I do have to leave at 7 o'clock to a very exciting exam, my learner's driving test. It's not the actual driving test, it's basically the thing I have to take before I get the permit to learn how to drive. So the written exam. And yeah, I've been preparing for it from this booklet over here, all of these questions. I've only been studying for like a couple of days, but yeah, they're just basic common sense stuff. It'll be fine. Yeah, hopefully. Anyway, back to the reading updates because that's where I picked up the camera today. I do have a major update, and that is I finished the book. Finally. Yesterday night, actually, I finished reading Honey and Ishu's Guide to Fake Dating, and I really, really enjoyed it. I really love YA romance books where the romance is actually not the main focus. I mean, it helps the plot, it really drives it forward, but then the themes that are talked about peripherally kind of become the main theme of the book. In this case, it was Isho's struggles that I related to the most because, always excelling at school creates this pressure on you to maintain that and be the best you can be academically. In my case, it was not just in academics, it was also in like extracurriculars, oratory and all, where I have consistently excelled. I just have this like looming pressure on me to always be that way. And yeah, unlike Ishu, I don't face any familial pressure on the matter. In fact, my family is always telling me to take it easy. But I feel in the absence of that, I put like extra pressure on myself because if no one is telling me to apply myself all the time, then I will surely fall behind, right? So some of the passages, the conversations that Ishu is having with her sister, with Hani, it really made me introspect about how I have poured so much of myself into academics and how I tied it so inherently to my self-worth and a lot of, problems that I went through in my last year of school because of that. And it did make me cry because, yeah, I wasn't ready to have an existential crisis at like 11 at night. Okay, that wasn't fun, but it was still a wonderful book. I really loved seeing Ishu's relationship with her sister strengthen over the course of the book, and it was especially heartwarming because they weren't always so. And it's proof that no matter how strained things can be in family dynamics, there's always hope to mend that bond and repair it again and create healthy familial relationships. Hani's struggles with toxic friendship, on the other hand, is one that I cannot relate to because I, quite like Ishu, have never had that many friends. I wasn't exactly popular in that way. So I never really understood why people feel the pressure to maintain certain friendships. Even though you've had them for so many years, it's not really that difficult for me to leave, toxic friendships. Even the mild acquaintances that I have had at school, as we don't as soon as I realized that we don't really get along, they do things that go against my moral code, my ethics, and my values. If their values aren't aligned with mine, it's really easy for me to cut them off from my life. And I do not have any people pleasing tendencies, nor is it difficult for me to stand up to injustice, or especially when it comes to my peers. In this book, another plot theme that happens is standing up to authorities when they do things that are unfair, like school authorities. And that is a completely different matter because, if you stand up to them, sometimes you can jeopardize your entire future. And that's like really dangerous. Standing up to peers is like nothing compared to that. Like, you call someone out for doing things wrong, in this case, microaggressions, and honestly, just bigotry, but like on a toned down scale. If you call someone out for that who is like literally part of your friend circle, nothing bad will happen to you per se. You'll just feel better about yourself and all the more healthier for having cut off that gangrenous limb of your life. As far as the romance itself, because after all, I am doing a romance book challenge, I quite enjoyed it. It was really adorable and sweet, very much like a Banh Mi photo, which I read earlier this year in January. I really love how their relationship supported each other to do the right thing, and it really benefited them both in a lot of ways. They really brought out the best in each other. Hani teaches Ishu to, be a bit more open to talking to people, be a bit more open to having a life beyond her books, and Ishu teaches Hani to basically grow a spine and call out her friends for all the harm they've been doing her. The only critique I have about the book is the ending. It just ended so abruptly, and while all of Hani's plot lines were sufficiently tied up, I wish there could have been more resolution about how her friend circle drama unfolded. In Ishu's case, there were so many things which weren't like properly resolved. For example, what exactly does Ishu decide to do, about her ambitions? Does she do more introspection and realize that maybe what she has been gunning for all this while isn't what she actually wants? The problem with her extremely strict family, that isn't properly resolved, and then her sister's estrangement from the family due to a decision that she takes like really early on in the book. It's mentioned in like the second or third chapter. It's not a spoiler. All of that didn't properly get tied off or resolved, and I wish that we had 2 or 3 more chapters to tease it out, or at least that there was a sequel to this book where we dealt with Ishu's problems more. I think I would have really liked to see that. Because of that unsatisfactory ending, almost in certain ways, I will only give this book, I think, 4.25 stars, or maybe it's a 4.5 star read. You know what, I'm gonna give it 4.5 stars because it made me cry, it made me emotional, and that's pretty impressive. But that probably also has to do with my emotional state yesterday. Nevertheless, so I'm gonna give it 4.5 stars, and a little update on Spellbound as well. I have been reading more of it. I am currently on page 200, so I have just 120 pages left, which I will be able to finish by either today or tomorrow. The reason I'm like dragging this out so long is because I don't have any other physical books, and when I am eating, I only like to read physical books, mostly because if I read digitally, then my family will think that I'm just playing on my phone or tab or whatever. So yeah, I read physical books at that time. And also early in the morning, I don't like to take my electronic devices as soon as I wake up. So at that time too, reading physically comes in clutch. Anyway, I'm gonna go for that test of mine, and I'll see you later for my next update. Hopefully when I have started another book. Hello again, and welcome to Valentine's Day. Today is day 5 of the readathon, and I guess the day it should officially end, but I do want to do a week-long readathon, and 5 days isn't really a week. So I think that I'm going to extend it to 2 more days and finish it off on Sunday and complete an entire 7-day period, because I am having a lot of fun. And now for the book updates. With Spellbound, I'm currently on page 268, and I'm really close to the end. I think I only have 50 pages left, but I'm, as I mentioned earlier, just stretching it on and on. And oh no, now that I've extended the readathon, how am I gonna stretch it out over 2 more days? This is the only physical book I own. Well, I guess I can just pick up another non-romance book during meal times and just focus on my digital books. But yes, right now we are really in the thick of the action, and honestly, I have no idea how the characters are gonna get out of this pickle that they're in. It just seems so insurmountable. So the next 50 pages are sure to be extremely action-packed. As for the romance, so far, nothing particularly romantic has happened. I mean, yes, like, very subtle stuff, but nothing too overt, which I like. But yeah, their relationship so far is still very much focused on their friendship and on emotional connection, which I am really enjoying. But then again, this is a romance book readathon, and this doesn't really fall into that category. As of my experience with reading romance books, granted I haven't enjoyed most of them, and this is better than that. But yeah, I wouldn't classify this as a romance book actually. It's very much focused on the fantasy. I guess reading the author's other books gave me a false expectation of how this one would go, but regardless. But the main update that I wanted to give you is that I started a new book yesterday night, and that is The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love by India Holton. And oh my god, I picked this up because I read the premise and it just sounded so delightful and fun and hilarious, and I was like, this is exactly what I want to read, because the plot just sounds so fun. Right? The way the blurb was written is what drew me in. Not just what the synopsis is, but like the words used for it. So basically in this book, it's set during 1890 in Victorian England, and we follow two rival ornithologists, Professor Beth Pickering of Oxford and Professor Devon Lockley from Cambridge. And in this world, ornithology is not just, the mundane study of birds like in our world, but there's a bit of a low fantasy element to it because all the birds they study are magical. They're like thaumaturgical species, that's what they're called. They all have really strange, bizarre powers, and some of them are outright extremely dangerous, like they can shoot ice shards at you or like literally explode in flames and burn down cities. They're just very interesting species of birds, and ornithologists are like this extremely ruthless bunch who will do anything, including hijacking vehicles, murdering people, blackmail. There is nothing that they won't resort to achieve their goal of capturing or just studying a new bird. And the International Ornithological Society in this book is offering this grand prize for any ornithologist who can capture this very rare bird. They will be named Birder of the Year, and these both, they desperately want to get that position because not only will they gain great fame and fortune, an entirety of £5,000 in like 1890, so imagine how much that would be now, but they will also get permanent tenure since they're professors. So that's what they're really aiming for. But along the way, they inconveniently have romantic entanglements. And from the plot, I was expecting it to be a really slow burn romance, rivals to lovers kind of deal. But as much as I'm loving the book, I don't know if I like the romance because the guy, Devon Lockley, that guy, he's just too flirtatious and he has that like charming rake vibe to him, which I really hate male characters like that. I find them deplorable. So having a love interest like that is so annoying to me. And also their like relationship is very much based on instant attraction. So literally in the first chapter itself, like we get to hear them thinking internally about how attractive the other person is, and I'm like, come on now, it's literally the first chapter. And by the 35% mark they've already kissed, and I'm like, god, this is way too fast. Can we slow down, guys? So yeah, I really hate it when characters like in romance books, I mean, it only happens in romance books, remark on the physicality of the other person. Like, I don't like to read about that. It just crosses from like innocent romantic territory to, the other end of the spectrum. And as a person who is a pathosexual and only likes to read clean romances, this is a bit too uncomfortable for me. I really don't want to hear about weird phenomenon that happened to the human body. Just like, let's not go there. I was confident about picking this up because I know the author usually only writes clean romances, because she has this other like trilogy also set in, is that Victorian England too? The Wisteria Society of Scandalous Ladies? Wait, no. I don't know. It's called the Wisteria Society of something ladies. I'm not sure. That also sounds really fun, and I will definitely be picking up those books after I'm done with this. But yeah, I love the writing. It's just so hilarious. It's period accurate, and yet it ends up being so just ludicrously funny. The humor in this book is exactly on brand for me. Like, it's literally perfectly aligned with my taste. And I'm highlighting about every other sentence because it's just so funny. I have to like catch myself from laughing out loud in public. It's just so hilarious. Okay, this will definitely go down as the funniest book I've read so far. And at this point, it might be the funniest book of the year, honestly. I am loving my time. It is such a hoot. And as of now, I'm just gonna ignore how aggravating the romance is and just focus on how funny it is. Like, it's literally slapstick comedy, which I really enjoy. It might not be up to taste for a lot of other people, but since I enjoy it, I don't mind. And I think what I'm gonna do is the author has another book in this series coming out next month, I believe. It comes out on March 20th, The Geographer's Map to Romance. And that one, I think I'll really love it even more because it will have the same type of hilarious writing and just crazy shenanigans going on in the plot. But the romance will be one that I think I like more because we already meet the guy in that book, the protagonist, who is this book's protagonist's cousin, so Devon's cousin, and he's much more reserved and like very academic studious and only cares about geography, does not want to interact with other people, and he definitely doesn't seem like the flirtatious rake that this guy is. So here's hoping I love that even more than this book. It's only the romance which is irritating me in this. Other than that, this would be a perfect 5-star book. I'm just so sad. Come on, this is a romance book readathon. What? Why am I like this? Today is the 7th and final day of this challenge, but actually I already finished it by yesterday night, and the only reason I'm picking up the camera today is because I couldn't update yesterday. And once again, it's because the house was too loud. From here on out, unless specified otherwise, the reason why I might not potentially update a particular vlog on the required day is because the house was too loud. Alright? And even now I'm taking a big risk to give this update because I don't know who might start screaming, like not in my house, in the neighboring houses at any moment. So yeah, but the reason I am filming now despite the risk is because I do want to upload this video today. And for that I'll need to finish it. So I'm gonna do our final reading wrap up of this challenge and let you know about my complete thoughts. I'll keep this quite brief because I've talked extensively about the books throughout the video after all. So the first book that I read for this video, Honey and Ishu's Guide to Fake Dating by Adiba Jaigirdar, I gave this 4.5 stars, and it was truly a beautiful book. I loved the South Asian diaspora representation. It's set in Ireland if I didn't mention it earlier. Read it for the fake dating trope, the grumpy sunshine trope, because yeah, I do believe they have that golden retriever slash black cat personality going on, and also complex familial dynamics in South Asian diaspora households, the sweet sibling bond that develops later on in the book, and also just commentary on microaggressions and toxic friend groups. That is like honestly the highlight of the book, you could say, other than the romance. Getting out of toxic friendships which serve you no good. I was just recently writing down all the quotes that affected me. I tend to do that with all the books that I read in my commonplace book, and I realized that 9 out of 10 were about friendship, or in this case, you know, the toxic variety of them. So yes, I would highly recommend if you are looking for books that discuss these themes. The second book, which I completed yesterday actually by afternoon, Ornithologist Field Guide to Love by India Holton, and I gave this 4.5 stars. It is in my heart a 5-star book. I wish it was, but you know, the romance, it just, why people, come on. Yeah, but that is honestly just my personal preference. The romance is, for a non-apothosexual reader, probably really sweet and nice, and if you subtract the parts which made me uncomfortable, it was alright. And again, my personal preference towards the male love interest's behavior, again, this is all very particular to me. For like the average reader, this might very well be a 5-star book because the romance would also be enjoyable for them, right? But setting that aside, everything else about the book just screams new favorite read. And yes, India Holton is now on my list of authors I will read everything by. If her writing style is consistent like this in all her other books, I'll read that trilogy which she has written, The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels, and the sequel to this book is called the Laos Academic series, this one. So the first one was about ornithologists and the next one is about geographers, and I'm sure I will have a blast. Read this if you want a book set in the Victorian time period with women in STEM and also neurodivergent representation. The author is actually autistic, and a representation of people on the spectrum is like beautifully done. As a neurodivergent person myself, I related to some aspects of Beth. Not entirely, because everyone's experience is different. It varies from person to person, but yes, like certain things I could see myself in her. Also read it if you're looking for a book that will literally make you laugh out loud, like holding your stomach because it hurts kind of laughing. Just brilliant, wonderful wordplay. All the puns are just so spot on, just phenomenal writing. Just read this book, okay? And just skip over scenes that make you uncomfortable like I did and focus on the story, which was just so marvelous. And now the final book that I read, also the only physical book in this video, that is Spellbound by F.T. Lukens. I completed this yesterday night, right before I wanted to film the update, but then things got too loud and I couldn't. But here we are. This book had a very strange third act where I said, right, the characters were in quite a bit of a pickle, but then the way it gets resolved was just, I feel, way too easy. But then this leans very much onto the cozy side of the fantasy spectrum, so I understand if the author didn't want to make it too high stakes. I mean, it just got resolved too easily. I gave this a solid 4-star rating. Read this if you're looking for books with an urban fantasy setting. Again, a grumpy sunshine dynamic, just magical mayhem all around. Sorcerers going around breaking curses, which are just so whimsical. All kinds of really fun stuff, but along with that, on the side, we have an overarching theme of like bureaucratic corruption and oppression of certain sections of society, and also gatekeeping. And you can draw parallels to the gatekeeping of Rook from the magical community, to how certain people are gatekept from queer and neurodivergent communities because, you know, the gatekeepers deem these people to not be enough of whatever community they want to be a part of, because they don't fulfill every single arbitrary criteria that these gatekeepers have set for entry to the club. And you can really read this as an allegory to that. That's something I feel quite strongly about, again, as a person who doesn't exactly fit all of these stereotypical notions that people have about belonging to a certain community. I know how it feels to be shut out because you're not deemed enough of something. So yeah, that was also a pretty cool topic that was discussed. I enjoyed the commentary about it. It could be a bit on the nose at times, but for YA people these days, you know, this generation, sometimes on the nose is really required. Some people like me, we don't get subtext. But yes, I would still recommend it even if the ending was just kinda cheesy and over the top with how easy it was. But it's just a fun time. We're just here to have a good time, right? So that was it for my reading only romance books for a week challenge, Valentine's Day edition. I hope you enjoyed your time here, and I hope that you also read a lot of fun books this week. Romantic ones or not, it really doesn't matter. Everyone has their own taste. One thing I took away from this is that I don't know. Do I just not like romance in books? I think that in fiction, I like romance as a concept more than a reality. Like when I read about it, it's just never as good as I make it up to be in my mind after reading the blurb. It always falls short. Yeah, I'm not cut out for enjoying romance, I guess. Nevertheless, I'm sure lots of people love romance, and I hope you get some good recommendations from this video. Check out all the books that I read because all of them were good. There were no letdowns, just according to my personal taste. They didn't perfectly align, but that's all right. That's the beauty of reading. We get to explore other genres and branch out when we normally don't. I mean, I didn't do much branching out, but nevertheless, I hope you all had a good time, and I'll catch you later in my next video. 再见!